Good morning, everyone. I'm Kourtny Garrett, President and CEO of Downtown Dallas, Inc., and I am so thrilled to be here with you this morning for another episode of our State of Downtown series. We have over 215 people registered again today, which is just such a wonderful display of how supportive everyone is and how interested everyone is in downtown Dallas. This State of the Downtown series began with an overall view of the downtown market, and so far we've heard from Ray Washburn, Sean Todd, and Larry Daniels. Today, we'll hear from Sara Terry, Senior Vice President of Stream Realty Partners, and I can't wait to get to that conversation. Now, as you can see, we're back here at the Market Scale Studios here at Bank of America Plaza. Market Scale is an up-and-coming downtown Dallas-based company who is graciously helping us to produce this series. They are absolutely committed to being a part of our community. As a digital marketing agency, Market Scale helps leading brands create and distribute content. They are experts in building and engaging media channels to help businesses grow. They produce podcasts and virtual productions, just like this one, as well as virtual events and innovative content across every industry. Now, we love giving plugs to our downtown companies, so if you like what you see, and I know many of you do, please reach out for more information about Market Scale. They just do a beautiful job with these productions. Now, a couple of housekeeping items. This program is being recorded and will be provided to you after the event. We'll send out a link to those who are registered, and it will also be posted on our YouTube page. We'll take questions after we get through some of the conversation this morning, so please type those questions into the Q&A bar, and we'll line those up after we get into a few more topics with Sara. Now, I want to take this opportunity to remind many of you about how much DDI is really here for you and what we're doing in the community, particularly those of you who are joining us as members and are vital supporters of our Downtown Public Improvement District. Since March, DDI has been focused greatly on our field operations and ensuring that we are providing the most accurate, real-time information to all of you. Our Downtown Safety Patrol and Clean Team are here to serve you daily, and be sure to download our See Say Now app on Android or iPhone that allows you to have real-time contact with our dispatch for the Downtown Safety Patrol and the Clean Team. Our response times are less than 7 minutes per call. Our homeless outreach services have resumed operations, and we've had several meaningful engagements in just the last few weeks. So many great success stories. Our role to relate and refer has provided a path to dozens of individuals this month alone for job placement, recovery programs, and shelter connections. We've provided over $90,000 in grants to small businesses to restore storefronts, and we're working with several of our merchants on pop-up patios to provide more outdoor space for your dining and enjoyment. We continue to work through our business continuity and recovery plan with all stakeholder sectors in the neighborhood, and we're committed to the economic development campaign that we launched at our annual meeting this year, Downtown Dallas Now, aimed at bringing more businesses to downtown Dallas. We're doubling down on the quality of our downtown public spaces with a concentrated street experience initiative, and we're constantly monitoring local, state, and national legislation, ensuring policy is advanced in the best interest of downtown. Finally, we have reaffirmed our commitment to building a downtown for all, elevating our goals for equity and inclusivity. Now, the goal of this series is to take an in-depth look at the downtown market, really dive into the drivers of our economy, look at COVID market impacts, recovery strategies, and how we collectively ensure that future growth and equitable advancement remain balanced. Why is this so important? The stability of downtown Dallas is critical to the social and economic health of our entire city. Downtown remains the largest employer, including several important employers who office in Stream buildings. We have the fastest growing residential population and have almost every year for the last decade. Downtown is just 0.04% of the City of Dallas land area, but 5.5% of the tax base. Downtown hotels also bring in 41% of the city's hotel revenue. Now, the challenges we are experiencing in downtown Dallas are not unique. We're seeing these challenges all over the country. But what is unique is how downtown Dallas is poised to emerge from the current challenges stronger than ever. $4 billion of development in downtown Dallas continues to move forward. New parks and schools are still in development. Residential occupancy remains over 90%. And we heard from Larry Daniels just last week that regional and local leisure travel is increasing. Enter the day of the staycation. And we are slowly and safely seeing employees return to their offices. There's no better way to tell this story than to talk to the individuals who are invested and committed to continuing to moving downtown forward. Those who are responsible for projects that are growing our economy, creating jobs, and delivering housing, retail, entertainment, and services. So today, it's my pleasure to be sharing the screen with Sara Terry with Stream Realty Partners. Sara joined Stream in 2014 with over 18 years of experience in commercial real estate, ranging from property management, landlord-tenant representation, and construction management. In 2017, Sara completed over $273 million in leases, finishing the year as the second highest producer on the office transaction team nationwide. Prior to joining Stream, Sara spent much of her career with Crescent Resources in Atlanta, Georgia, where she completed several leases with multiple corporate relocations on behalf of the landlord, most notably NCR and Carter's Oshkosh. Sara is a member of the Commercial Real Estate Women and has held several board positions with that organization, a very, very close ally of Downtown Dallas Inc.'s. And Sara knows downtown. Sara is involved in many Center City projects like Trammell Crow Center, 2000 Ross, Comerica Bank Tower, the Union, and so many more. And I am also pleased to have Sara as a part of our board of directors. So Sara, I welcome you this morning and can't wait to dive into this conversation. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Kourtny.
Thanks for being here. So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about you. I know you are from the area generally, but then you've kind of moved in and out of the market and have had a pretty fast growth trajectory. So tell us about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from East Texas. I grew up in Tyler and went to Chapel Hill High School. I moved to the Atlanta area when I was actually my junior year of high school and finished high school there and college and got into commercial real estate 23 years ago. I started in property management and my career evolved into leasing, which I've been doing for about 15 years. And eventually my career brought me to Dallas 7 years ago. And I was, as you had mentioned, I had previously worked in-house for a commercial real estate developer focusing on the Buckhead and in-town communities in Atlanta. So when I moved to Dallas and joined Stream, it was my first time working on the third-party side of the business. So my first project here was Trammell Crow Center. That was the first project that I was responsible for leasing. And it's been a really fun 7 years on this project. We actually office here. So I'm sitting here right now and looking out the window towards you. And just completed a $170 million renovation of the project, and we're now about 90% leased.
It's just phenomenal. I mean, there is so much news coming out of Stream right now, and you started to allude to this. So will you run through some of the company's current projects in the downtown area, the status? I know you've had some recent movement at Comerica Bank Tower. So tell us what all you have going on right now.
Yeah, so in my portfolio, I'm responsible for leasing Trammell Crow Center and most recently St. Paul Place, in addition to Chateau Plaza just across the park in Uptown. Some of my teammates are actually on Comerica Bank Tower, so I'm not directly involved in that project, full disclosure. But we did just recently, we were just recently chosen by Trigate Capital Partners to lease and manage that project. So we're thrilled to be a part of that. And that building is currently about 72% leased. So we've got a couple of large blocks of space down there. You may have heard that there was a recent enhancement and upgrade to the Main Street entrance of that project, so that's exciting news. And then ownership continues to evaluate continued enhancements to the existing building amenities, which are continuing to be a main driving factor for tenant-based decisions.
So let's talk about leasing. I mean, you obviously have had an incredibly successful career in commercial real estate leasing, and that is top of mind right now. What does the future of our commercial office market look like? Now, pre-COVID, we were really leaning toward a conversation with these tenant reps about the quality of life for their employees, and it really seemed like a lot of the more HR values were driving decisions. Where are my employees going to live? How are they going to enjoy the area? Does this particular location have a great talent pool? So talk about that in terms of, is it consistent with what you've seen being an important component to a company's decision? And do you think that that will shift once we kind of come into whatever this new market looks like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, the short answer is yes. Those things, quality of life, the low cost of living in Dallas, education, amenities are really still a very big and important part of the topic, even though a lot of buildings are not able to reopen their several of their amenities in their buildings just yet because of social distancing measures. They're still really top of mind for office tenants and prospective tenants. So I don't think we're going to see a change in what those demand drivers are. But what's important to think about right now is that there's a rising increase in building wellness features and health and safety measures. So that's become a part of the dialogue that really wasn't there before. So as in the past, for example, at Trammell Crow Center, a critical success piece of repositioning this project was getting all of the amenities right. So it's not just having a great building, but having the right kind of amenities that allow for a really balanced work and life balance for employees, such as where are you going to eat lunch? Is there a place for me to work out? And are there places for me to go and be in the building without sitting at my desk? So now what we're seeing, what we're hearing and seeing from tenants is a little bit more focus on what sort of measures buildings have in place for health and safety. So we're seeing the narrative from landlords really pivot towards what they're doing. And a lot of this stuff was already being done. It just wasn't talked about. So Stream kind of across the board really took a very proactive approach at the very beginning of the pandemic. And our property managers were working around the clock to develop a new set of protocols and procedures and guidelines to communicate to our owners and our tenants about what we're already doing and what changes we're going to be implementing or have implemented to respond to this new pandemic.
Well, and that's such a great point. And I think you sit in a really interesting position to answer this question. So when you look at the new construction properties that you're leasing versus some of the, let's call it 1980s stock in the downtown, we had this conversation with a group of real estate professionals recently about how some of our larger, iconic, older downtown buildings are equipped to be able to respond to some of the new demands coming out of wellness and sanitization and the HVAC systems. And I was surprised at how positive the answer is. So could you compare and contrast the difference, and if in reality there really is one because of so many building upgrades recently?
Yeah, so I can only speak to the buildings that I work on, but I've been very fortunate that we've got great ownership. We've got a really sophisticated level of understanding of what it takes to operate a building. So even on 80s vintage assets like Trammell Crow Center, prior to the pandemic, we were seeing an increase in bringing in outside air to respond to higher density that we were seeing from office users. We were already using a MERV 11 filter, which is one of the highest rated air filtration systems. You do have to keep in mind that some of the HVAC systems, depending on the age of them and the manufacturer specifications, you can't just switch out a filter to MERV 13, which you might see in some hospitals. So you really do have to evaluate it on a property by property basis. And that's what we've done. So our engineering team and our management team is looking at each project and determining where we can retrofit things and or plan for or implement upgrades. But some really easy low-hanging fruit is to increase those air filtration, those air filters where possible, and making any retrofits that we need to do to be able to continue to upgrade those as necessary, and then just bringing in more outside air. So I think that was, again, just another piece of low-hanging fruit that we were able to respond pretty quickly to be able to increase the circulation and change over the air more frequently within the buildings.
I don't know about you, but definitely conversations and subjects that I never predicted I would be having, much less on camera right now, talking about filtration systems in buildings. Now, putting some of those demands aside, Sara, recently one of your colleagues said that we shouldn't base any major investment decisions on what's happened in the last 5 months. So in terms of shifts in tenant demand, in terms of lease rates, terms of deals, are you seeing any reaction in the market yet, or are we in still a wait and see mode?
That's a great question, and we are hearing a lot of chatter about this in the brokerage community. There's a lot of speculation. There may be some truth to some of this, but it feels more like there's a hopefulness coming from the tenant community, from the tenant rep community. Generally speaking, we just completed our second quarter market update for Dallas, and we did not see a change in a lowering of, if you will, of the quoted rental rates for the area. So I don't think we've actually seen the true impact of what may or may not be happening in real time with deal activity. I'm hearing from some tenant rep brokers that they are seeing landlords get more aggressive with their strike rates on leases. So that's not surprising, although I think generally speaking, landlords are going to be hesitant to pull back on their quoted rate. There is a hopefulness to the community that this is a temporary slowdown in demand activity and not a permanent shift. So I think you're just going to see a little bit of continued hesitancy to really reflect that in a quoted market rate. I will say that we are seeing more concessions being offered. So when a deal does materialize and it appears that it is a good fit for your building, landlords are not wasting time on really getting close to their best deal to be able to secure that lease.
So in that same vein, I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball. I was on an interesting call with several of my downtown management colleagues from across the country, and just our neighbor, downtown Fort Worth, my friend Andy Taff. Andy, if you're watching today, hello. He was commenting on the North Texas office market, and it was an interesting contrast with colleagues we had on really in both coasts, and their 3-year outlook on commercial office was quite dim. Ours was a little more positive. Ours was more of anticipating seeing a dip and some challenges over the next 12 to 24 months. But looking at a 3-year horizon, Andy's crystal ball was that because of just the inherent nature of people wanting to work together, wanting to be in urban environments where you have proximity and you have those chance collisions and just the feeling and the energy of workspace, that we will see a full market return. In your crystal ball, Sara, from where you sit, where do you see us in 12 months, in 24 months, and then let's say 3 years out?
Yeah, so that's the thing we are all trying to figure out right now. Let me start back in March. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we had this abrupt halt to the real estate community, and that was across the country. Everyone went from just grinding and getting deals done. Employers were out following the same protocols, looking for new office space, potentially renewing. All of that was just trucking along as it has been. And then all of a sudden in mid-March, we saw the entire country move to the process of very rapidly shifting their focus towards getting all of their employees able to work remotely. So bringing in technology, making sure that their employees are able to do their jobs from a remote work location. That became the entire focus. And really in Dallas, deal activity during that time, there were still some deals happening. So there were things that were maybe in motion and towards the end of completion in leases that continued to move forward. However, anything that was in the earlier phases, for the most part, just hit pause for at least 2 months. And so we saw a very abrupt change in tenant demand as far as activity that was in the marketplace. So as we kind of look forward, and here we are, we're a few months into this. People are returning to the office. We're tracking occupancy levels across Dallas Stream DFW's portfolio. And what we're seeing is at the beginning of the summer, so in June, whenever the shelter-in-place order was lifted, we started tracking, and we saw about 10% of our building occupants in the building at any given time during the week. And here we are towards the end of August, it's almost September, and those numbers are looking more like 20 to 25%. So that's primarily coming from your smaller to mid-sized employers, as opposed to the really large, high-density employers in these office buildings. So we're seeing more of the smaller companies coming back initially. I think that when schools get back in place, some of the schools have already started back to in-person learning. We're going to see more of that after Labor Day. Excuse me. And as we see that, we're going to, I think, see those numbers continue to increase. The big question mark for everyone right now is the really large employers that had shifted towards a very open office layout with bench style seating. They're really struggling the most with bringing their employees back right now. And it's probably for a couple of different reasons. Number one, that bench style seating format doesn't really allow for the social distancing measures that we're all trying to practice right now. And then number two, there's a liability issue. So bringing people back to the office and someone potentially getting sick, I think that's something that corporate America is really treading very lightly on right now. So as we get closer to the end of the year, we're hopeful that we'll see hopefully the development of a successful vaccine, maybe more assistance from the government to help us get employers comfortable with bringing employees back to the office. And generally speaking, the timeline that we're hearing from our largest employers is that they're expecting to bring people back either at the end of this year or early in 2021. So
well, Sara, I think those are such great points and things that we have talked about in such great detail. And as we all look at how do we look into our crystal ball, how do we tell what the future holds, so much, I had this conversation yesterday, so much of where we have optimism in the downtown market lies again with these proof points. It lies with the $4 billion of development that is still moving forward. And we're hearing from many of those developers throughout this series. It lies in the fact that we have 12,000 residents living in the downtown. We have parks that are still under construction, new parks coming to downtown. We'll soon have our downtown Montessori school. They are still planning to open in September. They'll do virtual classes like the rest of DISD, and then we'll soon see that wonderful elementary school here in the downtown. We see a lot of activity in the East Quarter and in the farmers market. Construction cranes are still up. So there are so many of these stories happening in downtown. So we are very committed to telling that story here at Downtown Dallas Inc. of all of the activity that's happening in downtown. So you will continue to see us reach nationally with this story. The tremendous amount of development all over downtown is unparalleled. I talked about the East Quarter and a lot of what's happening in the farmers market area. When you start to kind of move to the west, you have, and we'll hear from Mike very soon too, land that's been assembled by Mike Hoke for the new park development. Ray Washburn, we heard about all of his great plans for the Dallas Morning News site. And we'll see all of this development continuing to move forward. So let me go back on one thing that you were saying, because I want to hone in on this a little bit. You talked about the bench seating, and you talked about, kind of how tenants are trying to figure out how to come back to work. Are you seeing wholehearted redesign of offices now? And do you think that that bodes well, actually, for the absorption in our office market? Or are people really kind of looking to maybe do more work from home hybrids?
So we are starting to hear some chatter from some tenants that with the bench style seating, as I mentioned, that may be struggling a little bit with whether that really is the right model moving forward. We've not seen a complete shift or redesign of spaces, other than maybe some tenants that were still in their construction or planning mode may have changed their furniture layout to accommodate for a little bit more distancing measures. But generally speaking, the tenants that are in leases in these larger spaces, they typically sign leases for 10 or 15 years. And their furniture is quite expensive. So I think that's part of the process that is taking them some time to figure out prior to coming back. So I do think that, and I'm technically, I'm a little bit vested in this wave, but I think it's going to bode well for us long term, particularly in the downtown area where office rents are a little bit less expensive than some of the other office markets in Dallas. So if they're switching their layout to accommodate larger workspaces and moving away from these higher density bench style seating, I'm anticipating that there will be a couple of different things that they'll do to try to offset it. And one would be maybe allowing more of a flexible work schedule. I think the general attitude is that there's less productivity for companies who have their employees completely working from home. So there's desire to bring people back to the office. You really cannot train, mentor, collaborate, and do creative things in a virtual setting. It's very difficult to do that. And I think we were very pleased at the beginning of the process that productivity was actually better than we expected. But as time lags on, we're just seeing some of those culture type things like mentoring, training, and collaboration are just falling behind a little bit. So we're anxious to bring people back. I do think there will be a shift towards less density, and I think that will be offset by some companies maybe expanding their footprint a little bit, going to a shared desk and hoteling style format. We're hearing that from some of our employers that their plan is to continue some sort of flex scheduling for the immediate and near term in the next 12 to 24 months. So that may just become a more common trend. And we were already starting to see that from consulting companies and other higher density users who did not have their staff in the office 5 days a week anyway. So I think that we may just see more of that trend continue going forward.
So one of the questions I wanted to kind of get to is your feed was breaking in and out, so I may have teased it a little bit with my opinions, but what advantages do you think that the downtown Dallas market has as we start to come back and as we start to move into more of a market recovery mode?
So I don't know if you caught this, if my feed was breaking up, but one of the things I mentioned that I think is going to be a real advantage for downtown and particularly our Main Street district is, we have one of the most iconic and beautiful skylines in the country. And that's primarily due to the fact that we have all of these trophy tower 50-story plus office buildings that were designed by Pritzker Prize award-winning architects. So we've got really great architecture down here. We've got great buildings. And to couple that with the fact that that particularly our Main Street district did not benefit as much from rising rental rates over the past 10 years as some of the other submarkets did, that kind of value is going to be really hard to ignore for employees, particularly if they're looking at having to grow their footprint to accommodate a lower density as opposed to the trend towards higher density. If you look at a building in the downtown area, you could easily take down almost double the space as you would in uptown for less than the price and still save money over uptown.
Well, we couldn't agree more. And I heard that during your technical test, you have some of the fastest internet that Market Scale has ever seen. So I think we might have a bit of a fiber advantage in downtown too in many of our buildings.
Yeah, we really benefit from that. I'm sorry our technology issues today aren't reflecting that, but
yeah.
It is pretty great.
Well, no matter what, it's unpredictable. Well, let's go to some of the audience questions because I am seeing quite a few come through. I think people are anxious to hear more. Our first question here goes back to some of the filtration systems that we were talking about. How do you think these enhancements to filtration systems and increases in cleaning will impact pricing for ownership and tenants?
That's a big part of the discussion right now. And for those of you in the audience who are on the operations and/or brokerage side of the business, you know that operating expenses. We're generally providing budget numbers to our clients in the summer, so we're in budget mode right now, and we're really looking at what those costs have been. It's a question that remains to be seen how landlords are going to ultimately address this. There's it's no lie that our costs have increased as a result of additional cleaning measures and upgrading some of the HVAC systems. But what we don't know is, will these be continued long-term changes, or are these things that are just temporary today? And I think back to 2011, when in the post 9/11 world, when I was a young property manager, and one of the biggest increases that we saw that had previously been considered a controllable operating expense was security. So that became a really permanent part of the operating expense that increased pretty dramatically for buildings across the country. I think that we'll see some increases to operating expenses today as a result of these additional cleaning measures, but it's hard to say just yet exactly what that impact will be.
Yeah. And this is a great question from William Bailey. How have you leveraged software or technology during COVID to help you perform your leasing duties?
Hi, William. Thanks for the question. William's a former colleague of mine. That's a great question. And wow, I think this has been the most interesting thing for me. And having been in this business for over 20 years and seeing the shift for leasing in particular, and going from a format where we're just used to doing everything in person, and that is our preferred method. We're salespeople and we want to be in front of people, but we've had to pivot very quickly to being able to utilize technology to market and sell our properties. And I think we've advanced on technology in probably 5 to 10 years ahead of where we were just a few months ago. So some of the things that we're seeing are an increase in virtual tours. Most buildings today have some form of a virtual tour that they can utilize. That's something that we identified very early on as a necessary marketing component for our office buildings, because we were continuing to talk to real estate decision makers that sit in other cities but could not travel to Dallas. So to be able to host a tour over a virtual Zoom chat was it was really unheard of prior to March. And in the past, Zoom calls and WebEx meetings were primarily used for things where you had to share a screen and look at something together. And no one would have ever dreamed of turning on their camera during a Zoom call, but now that's the norm. So I think that is a really cool part of our evolution over these past few months, something that we've all gotten much more comfortable with, and have really pivoted to online and virtual presentations and touring. And then the other thing that I've really noticed, particularly in the past month to 2 months, is most of the office buildings in Dallas have begun utilizing social media in some capacity, whereas in the past it was just a select few buildings that were utilizing that type of marketing campaign. But most buildings today, when I look at my LinkedIn feed, when I look at my Instagram feed, it's now filled with photos of office buildings around Dallas, and I just think that's really cool.
That's such a great point. And to kind of just build on that point a little bit, obviously I think that the challenges and having to work virtually have advanced that more quickly, but do you think some of that was in the works based on the type of tenant that was right, particularly in urban markets, meaning more of the innovation, the high growth, the startup? Were you starting to see a trend toward that already?
Maybe a little, but I just don't think that we would be where we are right now if we had not all been forced into a mutual isolation for the better part of 2 months. I just don't think we would be where we are right now with technology. It was just a very slow moving piece. It was something that a lot of people particularly in the real estate and brokerage community, just weren't familiar with. It was a new tool. These were new tools that were being utilized. I think there was an idea that some of these things might be important, but there wasn't a pressing and urgent need to be able to utilize these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So this question from Eddie Reeves, I really appreciate. And I think part of it goes back to your comment about seeing more movement in the smaller square footage tenants right now. How do we protect and promote the interest of small businesses in downtown? And I would elaborate on that and say both small businesses who are moving into our corporate office towers, as well as those small businesses that populate our street and serve as such great amenities for our workforce population.
Yeah, so and my thoughts immediately go to the restaurant retailers in our downtown area. A few years ago, while we had a number of restaurants in the downtown area, we've seen a dramatic increase due to tenant demand to these types of restaurants, and particularly at buildings along Ross Avenue, where retail restaurant activity didn't really exist 5 years ago. We now see a lot of that. So some of these restaurant retailers, as you know, are small businesses, and they really have been hit pretty hard during the pandemic, because so much of their business is and continues to be tied to office users. The statistic I like to use for the why of retail at Trammell Crow Center is that we had 16,000 daytime workers within a 1 block radius in any direction from that project, and there just weren't that many high quality food options for those workers to go to during the day. So we've seen at the pre-pandemic we were at about 90% leased on the retail restaurants for the area, which included 6 restaurants. 3 of those have reopened, and we're expecting 2 more to reopen in the next couple of weeks. So as far as what we can do to support those organizations, I think a lot of people have pivoted towards utilizing online ordering to pick up if they're not comfortable dining in. Most people, when I see even just walking around in the street today, are wearing masks and trying to do what they can to be able to return to some sort of a normal routine during the day. We really need more people to continue coming back to the office. And as I mentioned, we are seeing an increase in occupancy levels. I just really urge people that when they do come back down to their offices, to remember that those retailers really do depend on them for their business. And we need to all show support to each of those to continue to have these great options available. I may have frozen again.
Yeah, Sarah's frozen.
Well, we can hear you, Sara, at this point. So I'll try one more question or two, at least chat, and then we are getting close to our time anyhow. But Sara, if you are still with us, I just would love to hear any closing comments that you have, outlook on the market, and just in general, why you continue to be committed to downtown with your business. Did we lose her? Oh, there she is.
Sorry. Well, it is no secret that to you, Kourtny, and most people who know me, that I am a huge fan of downtown Dallas. I love to tell the story that when my husband and I were considering relocating from Atlanta to Dallas, I planned a weekend vacation to come and visit with my stepdaughter, who lives in East Texas. We stayed at the Jewel Hotel. We went to the Texas State Fair. We did not rent a car. We took a cab at the time because it was pre-Uber all around the city. We just had the best time. We really fell in love with downtown, and I continue to be committed. And I really see a very bright future for our downtown area. I did mention that the rental rates in our downtown area will be a huge advantage, I think, to not only Main Street, but even the Arts District, which continues to be a relative value for the quality compared to Uptown.
Absolutely. And we know your passion, we know your commitment. We know you have been with us every step of the way through this challenge and will be there as we emerge. So thank you, Sara, and thank all of you for joining us. Our next event is September 10th with John Zog with Crescent. Then we'll hear from Amy Meadows with Parks for Downtown Dallas Foundation, Mike Hoke with Hoke Global, and Michelle Brockwell with the AT&T Discovery District. All really important updates as to what the future of downtown holds. Now, I also want to take a minute just to talk a bit about becoming a member of Downtown Dallas, Inc. Many of you joining us today are members, and for that, I thank you. Membership helps us to continue to deliver the vital services that we do, from the clean and safe services out in the field to our economic development, corporate recruitment, and public policy activities. It is more important than ever, that we all come together as a downtown community to see the center of our city through. Now, be sure on that note to sign up for our emails as well at downtowndallas.com. That way you are sure to stay in the know, and follow us on all of our social media channels. Our State of Downtown report that we've referenced several times has some great market information. It is up on our website under the About Us page. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank Market Scale again for their great and wonderful production of this program. It's really been a wonderful upgrade despite some little technological difficulties today. We appreciate all of your work and producing something that's really important to our community. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on September 10th.